Now that we've completed the knob for the shaker table, we should give it its appropriate name. And we can move that into drawer assembly as well. Now mine's hiding down here. So what we're going to do, we're going to join it to the drawer front. And we're going to cheat a little bit as well. If you can remember from when you constructed the knob, the actual part that is inserted into the drawer was 16 millimeters long. Now, in reality, when it comes to in the workshop, it's good to have that sort of length just for ease of management while you're turning it on the lathe. But you may wish to shorten that in the real world, depending on how you're going to attach it onto the front. Personally, what I would do is I would just use an 8mm Forstner bit and drill out a hole to an appropriate depth, and then fit the knob. But we're just going to use our assembly menu here. We're going to go to joint, and you can just see it hiding down here. So I'm just going to zoom in and maybe orbit around a little bit. Escape. Just come in close, and what I want is I actually want to, I want to see this circle here and this blue line going out along the green axis. So, select that. Then we'll go back up. I'm just going to orbit around a little bit so we can see again. And basically I want to attach it into the middle of this face here. And fortunately in this case, it actually defaults to the middle, but you can adjust down the track if you need to. So again, I'm just going to click. So I've got this blue line coming out sort of towards me. We've got that, and you can see how you can offset it in here. But what I now want to do is I want to set it minus 16 millimeters in. So basically the flange sits flush with the drawer false front there. So I just type minus 16. Of course, you'll just adjust that in the workshop. And then we'll go OK, and you can see it fitting there. Now you can see these joint symbols appearing here, but you can actually turn that on and off as necessary. For example, there you go. Okay, so the rest of this tutorial, there's just a little bit of sort of minor internals we've got to complete inside the table. Basically draw runners and then just some packers there at the side as well. And that'll complete the table. So I'm just going to hide a few things here. So I'm not going to need the drawer for this one. So I'm going to hide the whole thing. I'm going to hide the tabletop. Now in terms of the frame, there's a few bits of that I need to hide as well, but not all of it. So I need to hide. I'll just go through and see what shows up. I need that. I need that. So everything else I pretty much don't need because it's going to get in the way. There we go. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do, we've got a sort of like a top packer and a bottom packer that we're going to put in there. So we'll go new sketch, and we're going to sketch off this plane here. Don't know why it goes off the screen like that, but anyway, we'll come in close. So the top packer, so R for rectangle, and we can basically start from this top corner here, and it's going to run the full length. It basically just sits in between here. So you can see there we can start putting some dimensions in. So it's going to be 42 tab 300. So it sits in there perfectly. Enter. And while we're here, we might as well go again. So R for rectangle, down the bottom, basically the same again. So it's 42 tab 300. And we'll finish that sketch. Okay, so there are two packers there. Now we're just going to extrude them, turn them into their constituent components. Extrude, so we'll go down the bottom one here. And now it's 13 millimeters, but basically what it is, it's just got to fit whatever that gap is there, which I believe is 13 millimeters. So we can type that in there if we want, but if we want to get it really accurate, we can actually just hover over this surface and left click on it, and it will just select that surface. Now the operation we want is we want a new component, and we go OK. While we're here, we might as well manage it because it can get a little bit confusing. So we'll call this bottom packer. Okay, Now we need to turn that sketch back on again because we want to see it for the top one. Extrude again, that one, click off there, new component, OK. Rename it and we'll call it Top Packer. Okay, now we won't worry about the mirror function just yet because we've still got one more piece that has to go in, and it basically is the draw runner. It's what the draw actually sits on, and it's going to be attached to this. Now in this case, I'm not really worrying about the joinery in this case because often what happens with these internals is there's a range of different ways you can join them. It actually makes it a lot easier often if you just actually countersink some screws and screw it into the side rails. I kind of have this rule that, okay, you want to have your really high quality joinery should be with your structural components. These are really just packers and guides for the draw, so they're not really structural components. And often I'll use poorer quality materials or offcuts in here as well. That's quite appropriate. Okay, so we need a new sketch. We're going to sketch off the surface of this bottom packer here. And again, we've gone off the screen. Now this one's a little bit funny because we've got this front rail that comes back here. So I've already gone in just with my inspect tool to work out what the actual dimension is. So R for rectangle, and I'll go from this bottom corner and I'll come along, and it kind of doesn't matter where I finish because the thickness of this piece is 19 tab and the length of it is 267. And you'll see shortly why it needs to be that. Okay, so we've got that and we will finish that sketch. There we go. So one more extrude. So off this surface, and it is going to be 42. So you'll notice there all those dimensions are 42, 42, 42. That's because we're cutting it out of a 140 mil wide board, and we can get three lots out of that and still allow for, you know, the width of the saw cut as well. So this is going to be 42, and we're not joining it. It's going to be a new component. It's okay, and it'll appear down here, and we're going to call this draw runner. There we go. Okay, so basically now all we need to do is we need to mirror that. I'll just get it back in the screen. And again, it goes back to how we set this up in the first place. I know there's different ways you can mirror things or organize your work, but just doing it this way makes it a lot easier, in my opinion in any case. I'm just going to turn that sketch off. So basically we'll go create, mirror, and we're going to mirror components, and we just click that. And I'm just holding down my shift key. Our mirror plane, and it's that one there. You can see they've mirrored out there. Go okay. There they are. And then now when we start to bring everything back, so we've got our drawer, you can see how it all fits together. So we'll unhide everything now. And we'll have a little bit of a look around and just make sure that everything's sitting perfectly. Now the reality here is, in this drawing, I have not allowed any tolerance whatsoever. So there is basically no gap between the side of that drawer and the packers. Now in reality, that would cause problems, and generally I would, at a minimum, I would have 1 millimeter on either side of that, just to allow for expansion and contraction and movement. So whilst we're going to sort of create a set of working drawings that have specific dimensions, they're going to need to be modified very slightly in the workshop. So it's always good to be aware of that.